Now I'd like to ask Matthew Peterson to come forward. Matt's got some lessons from Dave for us.
Dave hates this. This is really hard. Dave was my best friend. How do you explain a friendship? Dave and I rode bikes for hours. And when we rode, we talked, but never about sports, not about politics, a little bit about our jobs. We'd talk for hours. We would try to plumb the depths of interpersonal relationships. Two half-blind men trying to see better. We shared our hopes and dreams and love for our kids. We shared the bafflement, frustration, heartbreak, elation, and profound joy we found in our interactions with the women in our lives. We shared so many, many secrets. And now that he is gone, I'm going to tell you some of them. No, I won't. I won't. He was my best friend. This is not a surprise to anybody, but Dave was an avid bicyclist. His bike is here. For a few years, he rode his bike to work almost every day, even when it was cold, rainy, sometimes snowing. He rode hard on weekends, too. The first summer, he did the AIDS ride. Oh, I can see him. The first summer, he did the AIDS ride, biking from Minneapolis to Chicago. I greeted him with some of his family at the completion of his 560-mile journey. And I cried when I spotted him riding with hundreds of other people. Inspired by him and the intensity of the event, I told him, I'll ride with you next year. If you go. And then that January, he called to tell me he had signed up for another ride and to remind me that I had told him I said I'd do it. I had never ridden more than a few miles at a time, and it had been a long time since I had done that. But with his encouragement, I signed up. My first ride was 6 miles, and he laughed and called me a wuss, but he didn't use that word. As I got in better condition, I upgraded to those pedals with clips, the shoes with clips. And the first day I had the clips, Dave and I rode 40 miles, and I fell 6 times. That day, as I tried to unclip, or forgot that I had clips, each time I fell, Dave laughed harder than he had the time before. It hurt a little, but it wasn't too bad. He was such an inspiration. Right near the start of that big ride that we had signed up for, there was a very steep hill just the other side of the river in Wisconsin, the other side of the river from Minnesota. It was very steep, and you had to just pump. You just put in a low gear and just pump slow and steady up the hill. I thought I was done before I'd even started, but Dave rode right next to me. Boosting my confidence and cheering me on. we'd go for hours at a time, stopping at the rest areas for sports drinks, bananas, and Cliff Bars. At night, we'd crash exhausted in campsites with 1,100 other riders and get up in the morning and do it again. We camped in towns called Waterloo, Partyville, and Watertown. In Watertown, it stormed one of those big, huge thunderstorms, just downpour, and all of our tents were under inches of water. And in the middle of the night, there were 1,100 people who tried to sleep in a high school gymnasium, shivering under noisy Mylar blankets. Everything was soaked through. Instead of being drenched in Watertown, we wished we had gotten stuck in Partyville. The day of the longest ride, we were scheduled to go 106 miles, but we missed a turn and ended up going almost 120 miles. Dave took it with the grace and patience you might imagine. If you imagine him a gracious and patient man. He was neither that day, not that day, or the day he got a flat, or when we had to wait in line at the bicycle butt balm distribution center, or the nights when people in the other tents were not quiet enough, not quiet as mice in the distance. I spent a week in a tent with that guy, and I have nothing but profound respect for Laura after that. But when we would coast through an intersection, when we'd coast through an intersection, he'd call, "I love you," to the police officers holding traffic for us. He'd laugh and eat and gulp water at the rest stops. At the end of the ride on Chicago's lakefront, we held our bikes high over our heads and cried and cheered. So over the last several years, Dave and some friends from high school took an annual trip to West Lafayette, Indiana, or where Purdue is, to visit our friend Jay, who's an associate provost. Watch Big Ten football and laugh. Our last one was just 5 weeks ago. And I'm so grateful that it happened. We love these weekends of laughter because they restored and renewed and deepened our friendships. We needed them too to get in touch with our inner adolescent boys. Not that they were ever really that far away. But so the pattern of the weekend was this. Statement, that's what she said. Uncontrolled laughter. Statement, question, statement, that's what she said. All weekend long. And it was funny every time. Every time. I miss Dave, and when I think of him, I smile, if sometimes through tears. And I can hear his laugh and see his smiling eyes. I know you guys can too. If Dave had been sitting here during my remarks this morning, we wouldn't be here. But he would have leaned over to Jay or Scott or Kurt or Daryl or Tom and said, "That's what she said." Amen, Dave. Amen.
Thank you, Matt. Bowen Evans, Dave's nephew, is going to come and share with us our New Testament lesson for today.